Welcome to Facts on Friday, everybody. Today is January 14th, and as per usual, we've got a ton of stories to get through, so we're going to jump right in. And Misty, what do you have to
We
start
are
with?
indeed going to jump right in. There's always so much, you guys. It is nearly impossible to choose stories to cover. It's tough. So I want to start off with. Let's start with maybe we'll start with. So I want to talk about. Some of you may have heard or be familiar with this story, but it hasn't been getting a lot of coverage, which is a little frustrating to me because it's so ridiculous what's happening. Okay, so this is Marquetta Jones Williams is organizing a fundraiser because her husband James, who you see here pictured, was shot on New Year's Eve by a cop because there's kind of a tradition in some communities where on New Year's Eve at midnight you will shoot into the air, right? Pretty common knowledge. People know about that. I don't recommend doing it. It's not exactly the best like gun safety decision to make, but it happens. It's something that is very well known. It's a common practice throughout communities all over the place, right? So he was doing that and was shot by a Canton police officer for doing so and killed in front of his wife. So the fundraiser just very simply says, "Hi, my name is Marquetta Williams, and I am making this fundraiser to raise funds for expenses for the funeral and other costs to help my family after the tragic and unexpected loss of my husband, James Williams, of 14 years due to the Canton police shooting him down in cold blood, unnecessary without cause. He leaves behind 6 daughters, and I didn't get a chance to get life insurance for him, and he was my main and only support system, raising our daughters and taking care of home. Due to this loss, I have to be off work for some time to deal with everything and take care of our daughters, so I will have no income to pay for the funeral or anything. My husband was a loving and wonderful father, and would give the shirt off his back to anyone in need. He always made you laugh. His jokes, and was always smiling. He was a great man and didn't cause any trouble, always trying to help people and diffuse any conflict. Any donation is appreciated and is a blessing, no matter how big or small. Everything goes to laying him to rest and taking care of his 6 daughters and wife." So this family has also been, I'm going to drop this link in the chat. So if anybody has it in their heart to donate to this family to help deal with this at this time, it's pretty intense what's happening. There's not any accountability going on currently, which is ridiculous. So they also have my friend Ryan, who has been on Facts on the Ground before. You guys may remember him. He is a founding member of Serve the People Akron, which Akron is right in the same area as Canton. So he has been going to they had a protest on Saturday for this family, and they want to continue doing that for as long as possible. So I have a couple of videos. Let's see.
Before you play the videos, let me ask, if this is a common practice, why did the police target him?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know.
Under investigation, as
probably
they like
not.
To say?
Probably not. They've not released the names. They've not really, or the name of the officer. There's no, of course not. So we don't know. We don't really, that's why they're holding these protests. So I'm going to show a video from the one that they had Saturday. Oh my God, I have so many tabs open, you guys. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Okay. So this is the one. Share tab audio. Yes, that's on. Okay. So this is from Saturday.
All right, I need everyone to hold it down. James' wife is going to say a few words. So with that being said, I need everyone in cars to please keep it quiet and pay your respects to Miss Williams.
So this is his wife that's getting ready to speak.
Just speak into it and react as much as we can. Hello, everyone. I want to thank y'all for coming out here, supporting me and my family behind this. Y'all, you know what I want. I want justice. And I want peace. Yes. And I'm not going to get paid off at all. But my husband, he let a lot to me and to the girls, to everybody that knew him. And y'all knew there's like going to be a lot of dissatisfaction. But these people right here, y'all got an answer. Y'all definitely got an answer. Y'all got police. I want that name of that officer. I want his bag. And I want his family to feel how I feel. I'm period. Like, bring him back, we can't bring him back. But I'll rest knowing that motherfucker in here, and excuse my language, but I'll rest knowing that he is not no longer a Shannon police officer here or nowhere else.
Right.
Justice for Roe.
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 So at the end there, you could hear them yelling "Justice for Roe." That was his nickname. Just to clarify, that's his name. His nickname was Roe. So they were yelling "Justice for Roe." So that was at the protest that they're having on Saturday, or that they just had on Saturday. They are also, the family is also. The family is also asking for those protests to continue on every Saturday. And again, I'm getting all of this information from my good friend Ryan, who, if you guys aren't familiar with Serve the People Akron, you should be. They walk the fucking walk. They're a great mutual aid group. They do serves in their community where they serve the homeless every single week. They collect coats and they, everything, bus passes, all of that stuff. They're really in the community on a regular basis doing the work. So this I'm going to share with you is the flyer that they're using. Sorry, my tabs. I have too many tabs open at this point. I'm a little all over the place here. So this is the flyer that they're using. So every Saturday, this was for tomorrow. So every Saturday they're going to hold a protest at the Canton Police Department. So if you are in the Canton, Akron area, if you're anywhere near there and you can make it out to a protest, please do. This is honestly not getting any coverage. I haven't seen anybody talking about this at all. So we need to get more attention on this. And elevate this family as much as they can. I mean, you can see here they have 6 daughters. I mean, his wife is now on her own to handle 6 daughters and bills and all of that stuff. So they definitely need a lot of support. And more importantly than that, I think they need their demands met. So that's what I'm going to show you guys next is the demands that the family is making. Maybe if I can find it. If I can find the right tab. I think that's it. Yes. Okay. So this is the Justice for James 10-point action plan. So on January 1st, 2022 at 12:06 a.m., James Williams was celebrating New Year's Day by firing into the air when he was shot and killed in his own backyard by an officer of the Canton Police Department, CPD. Many Canton residents were doing the same thing that night, but James Williams was the only person to be killed by CPD. The people of state of Ohio, through the Ohio General Assembly, have determined that it is not unlawful to discharge a firearm on your own property. So this is the 10 demands that they have. The family, friends, and supporters of James Williams demand justice for James. Number 1, immediately release the name of the CPD officer who killed James Williams. Number 2, immediately release all 911 calls regarding gunfire in the area that night. Number 3, immediately release all CPD dispatch records regarding the James Williams incident. Number 4, immediately release all dash camera videos from the CPD officers on the scene unedited. Number 5, immediately release all body camera videos from the CPD officers on the scene unedited. Number 6, immediately return the security camera recordings taken from the Williams home. Number 7, immediately release any written or oral instructions from the CPD chief of police given to his officers instructing them on how to respond to celebratory gunfire. Number 8, immediately release a public condemnation of the reckless and deadly conduct of the CPD officer who killed James Williams by blindly firing through a wooden fence. That's something I forgot to mention. He was shot through a wooden fence. So this officer didn't even have like a clear shot. He could have very easily shot one of their kids. Just saying. So number 9, immediately terminate the employment of the CPD officer who blindly, recklessly, and fatally shot James Williams through a wooden fence. And number 10, immediately bring appropriate criminal actions or criminal charges against the CPD officer who shot and killed James Williams in front of his wife and children. None of those demands seem unreasonable to me. And so every Saturday, the family is asking that people continue these protests until these demands are met. So again, if you're in the area, please head out there on Saturdays if you can make it out. And if you are able to donate to the GoFundMe, I did just drop that in the chat. Please do so. Share the link around, share the story around, because again, this is not getting any coverage. I have not seen anybody talk about this at all. It's not, I live in Ohio. It's not on Ohio. Obviously it's not on Ohio local channels. It may have made some noise on like the local Canton networks. I haven't seen anything here in the Columbus market. So, just try to share the story around, try to share the GoFundMe. This seems like a pretty clear-cut case of like reckless behavior by a police officer. Shooting through a wooden fence at a man who was on his own property, doing something that is perfectly legal in the state of Ohio. It seems like a pretty clear-cut case of let's get his ass fired. At least, at the very least, he should lose his job on this one. So as we saw with the Albury case, it's sometimes justice doesn't happen unless you get real loud about it. So please, if you can, make some noise for this family.
And the fact that they have to issue demands for actions that should be taken
Immediate.
immediately and transparently is patently ridiculous in and of itself. But unfortunately, it's par for the course, and it highlights another problem with the media's obsessive focus on COVID-19 and the constant fear mongering that goes along with that, in that it obscures injustices like this, police murders like this, which are still happening all of the time. And it might not garner the attention that, say, George Floyd's murder did, but it's no less reprehensible.
It should.
It should.
It should.
And again, this is something that is still happening on a continual basis. And I noticed at that protest, even though it's the first one, I believe, no presence of the official corporatized contingent of Black Lives Matter, no Al Sharpton, no none of the civil rights leaders who are usually there to rally ostensibly for the victim and their families, but usually just for their own public image.
Yes.
As
It's
we've
not
seen
sexy
time and
enough
again
yet.
with Al Sharpton. Yeah.
There's not enough
So-
attention yet. They'll come when it becomes, a national story, when they can make a buck off of it. That's usually what happens.
Yeah,
But
and-
yeah, Marquetta shouldn't have to be, like she said, I'm not good at public speaking. She shouldn't have to be. She shouldn't have to be holding protests to get justice for her husband. It
Right.
shouldn't be a thing.
And clearly the cops are doing what they always do, which is getting their quote unquote official story together behind the scenes before they say
Mhm.
anything public. They're engineering what they're going to say to present it in a way that implicates them as little as possible. And we don't have the full story yet, obviously, as we see from the demands that Marquetta is making. We need to see that footage. We need to hear from the police chief as to what instructions were given, etc. But at this point, what we can say is that it was a murder, especially if it is a fact that the police officer shot blindly through a fence and didn't know what he was shooting at.
His children were right there with him. His wife, they were all like in the backyard on his own property. So it very easily could have been one of the kids. Not that it's any better that it was him. But I'm just saying, he very easily could have killed a child, being so reckless and shooting through a fence like that. It's irresponsible. Just that's like base level. Like irresponsibility is like base level. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that this should be a no-brainer. Anytime there's a situation like this, all of those demands, I mean, maybe not all of them, maybe not like they shouldn't immediately fire people. I mean, they should be put on leave, an investigation should be done. But those things that they're asking for, the dash cam footage and the body cam footage, that stuff should be immediate. Anytime there's a police shooting like that, that stuff should be immediately released to the public.
Right.
They are public servants. We do pay their salaries. They work for us, supposedly. And so if they conduct themselves in a way that there is a situation where it is questionable that they have made the right call or they've done the right thing, that stuff should be immediately released, in my opinion.
Right. And all of that technology and all of those stipulations were put in place in the name of transparency, so
Yes.
that when things like this happen, the public would get as clear a picture of possible as to what happened. But as we've seen time and again, that's never the case. And there's always some kind of manipulation that goes on the part of the police. And based on the facts that we know so far, there was no clear and present danger presented to the police officer that would have justified any kind of action, that would have justified the action that he took, assuming that it is a male police officer.
Yes,
So,
that's fair. We don't know that for sure. But yes. So again, just make some noise about this if you don't mind. If you can donate, please donate. And I also just as an aside, as I mentioned, I'm getting all of this information from a friend of mine whose name is Ryan. And he has his own YouTube channel. You can go and watch. He has a whole host of videos there about this protest. I'm going to drop the link to his YouTube in the chat for you guys. He's an amazing activist. Again, Serve the People Akron does incredible work in their communities on a regular basis. They homeless feeds, and they take care of bus passes and like tobacco. They hand out tobacco to homeless people. They are legitimately doing the work in their communities. So I'm also going to drop. They have a link tree. So they have a couple different ways that you can donate to support the work that they're doing. And you can also they regularly update on their Twitter. They post pictures with people's faces obscured of the different serves that they do or the different actions that they do throughout their community. You guys know I'm a big fan of mutual aid. I'm a big fan of people who are doing that kind of work. I used to do that kind of work. So if you guys can support them as well as the family, the Williams family, please do so. And even if it just means like following Ryan on Twitter, following Serve the People on Twitter, sharing their work, sharing their links, we need that kind of work more now than ever. So that's just an aside. That's who I'm getting this information from. He was at these protests, and he's an incredible activist. And so I just want to give him some props. You guys know I love my fellow activists. So
one thing I want to add is that across this country, we're seeing the so-called vaccine mandates being placed on police forces, on fire departments, on healthcare workers, and that is adding an incredible amount of stress to their daily work. And particularly police under stress, this has been studied time and again, leads them to act out, commit crimes, let's say, even. And that's another problem with these mandates that are being battled over in the courts, is that they, among many other problems, lead to problems like this, where I'm not saying this is the case. We don't have the information yet, but it very well could be that that was a stressor that was involved in.
Well, you guys know I'm no fan of cops. I don't even think it's necessarily even just the COVID mandates. I mean, it is what it is, but the
Right.
capitalism, period, is putting an extreme stressor. They're being used as the attack dogs of capital. And that's an extremely stressful situation to be in. I don't feel bad for them necessarily because, it's a choice that's made. And I think a lot of really terrible people are drawn to positions of power like that. But I think there's no denying that the socioeconomical times that we're in, the stresses of capital, the way that they're being used as like the front line to protect power, that has to be incredibly stressful. So, I don't really feel bad for him, but it is something that people need to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And the COVID mandates and all of that stuff certainly does add to it, I guess.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying, that it's an exacerbating factor. And I absolutely agree with everything else you said. And whether or not that played a part here, we don't know, but it's something to keep in mind.
Definitely. So, yeah, I guess moving on from that. Oh, there's so much to talk about, you guys. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna start with a Daniel Hale update. So I have kind of a little block here that we're gonna do some Daniel Hale, Commander X, and Julian Assange updates, because there are some in each situation here. So a couple days ago, Daniel Hale's support team, which if you're not following them on Twitter, it's at Team Daniel Hale. And you can find regular updates about how he's doing. They have the donation link there. They're raising funds for him to help with his legal fees. And then just once he gets released, getting back on his feet again, because after spending 54 months in jail, he's going to have, a rough go of it, I'm sure. But recently, here we go. The archaic system of the carceral, just like the prison industrial complex and the way that it treats people. So they tweeted recently on January 11th that a lot of Daniel's scheduled calls and letters are unfortunately caught up in the archaic rules of the unit he's in. He's feeling pretty lonely. My cat's right here, so his tail will probably, sorry guys. If you drop a note in the thread, we're talking to him in 10 minutes and can read them out loud. Obviously, this was from January 11th. That's not something that you can do now. But if you want to go to that thread and leave some words of encouragement or whatever, the next time they speak to him, I'm sure that they wouldn't mind passing along those messages. But I also wanted to share with you guys, Daryl, you're driving me crazy. Dude. Fam.
Hey, get that boom mic out of here.
It's hard enough to do this without you being in my face. Hold on. Okay. We're so professional here. Facts on the ground. Okay. So Sleepy Josh will tell you he's a dick. Okay, so here we go. This is what I really wanted to talk to you guys about. So if you are writing to Daniel Hale already, thank you. Please do that if you're not. But just as a word of caution here, hello from Daniel. He got 22 rejected mail notices this week for letters that didn't have a full name and return address on them. He really wants you to try to write him again if you think you might have accidentally left yours off, so please do so. And then this is the link here. I will drop this in the chat as well. There's information about how to write to Daniel Hale. There are restrictions. There are things you can send and can't send. And this is across the board. If you write to Commander X, he has his own set of restrictions. If you write to Daniel Hale, there's another set of restrictions. It's varied. It all varies. So when you go to write these people, please make sure that you are checking and making sure that you're using the right paper, the right color ink, that you're not sending, whatever. It's all really stupid and arbitrary, but just make sure, because getting mail is a lifesaver. That's not me exaggerating. It's a lifesaver. So just make sure that you are checking everything, making sure that, because he really does need your letters. So I will drop this. So there's a very specific, I guess I could show you guys this.
I wonder if some people aren't including their return addresses
for reasons.
Yeah, for obvious reasons, as
yes.
in they don't want to
which
be
I understand.
tracked.
If that's not something you're careful, or if you're not comfortable with sharing I understand. I really do. I really do. But he won't get your mail that way. So maybe just like on that tweet where you could like leave a message and they could relay that to him on the phone. Maybe do that. So this is, we'll just go over this briefly. This is the instructions for Daniel. Again, this is just for Daniel Hale, Commander X, Julian Assange, Joshua Schultz. They all have their own stuff. But here you see the address. Use plain white paper, no cards, black or blue ink, handwritten or printed. Use standard size envelopes, no packages. You can send up to 6 pages double-sided. I would be careful about going all the way to 6 pages because they will find any reason to reject a letter. So maybe keep it to like 4, just to be on the safe side. Please use a physical address as the return address, not a P.O. box. Also be aware that Daniel can't respond to group or organizational letters, only to individual persons. Daniel can receive photos in color in the mail, fun memes, transcripts such as of interesting podcasts, and printouts of news articles. He is hoping for articles you found compelling, workout routines to help pass the time, and words of affirmation. Hand drawings are allowed and we encourage them. So if you're an artist, that's a great thing that you could do. Paperback books, magazines, and newspapers can be sent directly from the publisher or from Amazon. And the Bureau of Prisons website has more details on mail policy. Be aware that mail is sometimes rejected for seemingly arbitrary reasons. And that is the truth. Like I said, they will find any reason they want. And also just be very mindful that he is in a communications management unit, which means your letter will be read by somebody. Okay. So just be very smart about what you're writing in there. Keep it positive. If you are an activist and you're doing actions in the street, he is an activist. He is somebody who has been an organizer for some time. Especially if you're an anti-war activist, I'm sure he would love to hear about the things that you're doing. But keep it positive. Keep it friendly. They will write back to you. Daniel Hale will write back to you. Commander X will write back to you. Julian Assange, we don't receive very many letters from him. I'm not entirely sure he's getting all of his mail, or that any letters that he is sending out are making it out. So, but it's worth a shot. It is definitely worth a shot. It doesn't take that long to jot down a couple paragraphs and send it to, one of these people who is essentially, especially in the case of Daniel Hale and Julian Assange, essentially in solitary confinement. So this is their only contact with the outside world. So I just wanted to briefly write that. Phenomenal mysticism. Really, do people actually need to use a specific color of ink to write a letter? Yeah, it's just their way of making things arbitrary and them giving them excuses to reject mail for whatever reason. It is what it is. So just follow the rules just so that they can get their mail, because it is, I really am not exaggerating when I say it's a lifesaver. So kind of on those same lines, I want to jump to Commander X. Poor Commander X. You guys, he's getting fucked over again. So there is now COVID in his what the hell? Wing unit? What the hell do they call it?
Cell block.
Thank you. Yeah. So there's COVID now. He was supposed to have a hearing on the 18th. That is now not happening. So when there's COVID in his cell block or in any cell block, they lock them down entirely, which is really stupid to me, because in Commander X's situation, he's not in like a singular cell. He's in like a big room with like 18 other people. So now they're all locked down with COVID, and it's whatever. So apparently, according to Glory Jones, who is probably the go-to person for information, also X's sister, Amy, she's also I'm going to drop this in the chat, freecommanderx.com. And also, if you want to follow on Twitter at freecommanderx_, they give regular updates there as well. But this is the website, the actual official website. I don't know if our viewers and our listeners are super familiar with who X is. We haven't really done like a deep dive into it, but just to give you like a brief background on who he is a hacktivist, an activist. I guess we could pull up, share. His website gives like a pretty good little brief history here. So about Commander X. Homelessness has been a hot button issue in California for quite a while now. Commander X, whose official name is Christopher Doyen, fought for legal encampments. According to court documents, Doyen allegedly participated in and helped organize, quote, Operation Peace Camp 2010, end quote, a 2-month-long protest where over 50 people slept outside the Santa Cruz County District Courthouse protesting the city's homeless camping law. The protest ended with numerous arrests. Court documents also claim that Doyen allegedly hacked into Santa Cruz County computers as retribution for the protest breakup by conducting a distributed denial of service attack, which is a DDoS, a DDoS. Doyen was arrested June 11th by Mexican immigration authorities and deported to the United States, where he was arrested by FBI agents the next day. And I just want to put this out there that X is not hurting anybody. He was living in Mexico very quietly with his 2 dogs, who he adores. If you have dogs, send pictures to X. He loves dogs. But he was living quietly in Mexico. He was doing zero activism. He had a show that I was on his show. But it wasn't like anything major. He was just having conversations with people. There was no like heavy activism. He was in ill health. He's still in ill health. He's doing a little bit better now. But he wasn't hurting anybody. So the fact that they bothered to go to Mexico and essentially kidnap and rendition him to the United States for something as silly as a DDoS is telling. You know what I mean? That they're going after him this hard for something that it really is just so it's vindictive is what it is. So also down here, here are some people that you can contact: Susan Francis Knight and Matthew Perella, I'm guessing is how you say that, and demand that the charges be dropped. And these are people who are with the Department of Justice. And then also here is the address that you can write to him currently. So Christopher Doyen, number 03476-028, Santa Rita Jail, 5325 Broder Boulevard in Dublin, California, 94568. So you can find that information on the website. Also, again, on Twitter at @FreeCommanderX_. So I think that their lockdown in his unit or cell block or whatever is over on the 22nd. Is what I'm hearing from Glory. So I don't know when the hearing that they were supposed to have on the 18th, I don't know if they're going to redo that the 22nd. I don't know if it gets pushed back some ridiculous amount of time. We don't know. So I just wanted to give everybody an update on that. So, you know, if you guys can write to Commander X too, he really does appreciate it so very much. Glory speaks to him on a regular basis. He is able to have like video chats and phone calls and stuff like that pretty regularly, which is very different from Hale and Assange. But she has spoken to him and he loves the mail. I should mention too that this isolation that he's suffering because of this COVID outbreak, he just came off of a 15-day restriction for some stupid disciplinary action the guards decided to throw at him. They claimed that he was hanging clothes from his bunk. And so he had like some ridiculous and arbitrary 15-day restriction, and he was like unable to have phone calls or video chats or any of that stuff. So this is kind of like a double whammy for X. And he was feeling pretty hopeful. The thing on Tuesday was supposed to be fairly hopeful. We were hearing some positive rumblings that this might be something that, you know, was going to be ending pretty soon. And now this. So I'm sure he's in, you know, kind of the dumps at this point. So if you guys can write to him, please do so. But moving on from that, I also want to update you guys about Julian Assange because there's more shenanigans. So there's also COVID in Julian Assange's. Hold on, because I forget what the hell they call it. Every time I forget. Here we go. His spur. Oh, goodness.
Hellhole.
Yes, might as well just call it that. I don't know. It's because it's so hard for me to remember because for some reason in the UK it's called a spur, and then here it's like a cell block. Sometimes it's a unit. It's whatever. So this is Stella updated. This is from January 13th. In Julian Spur, 7 out of approximately 40 prisoners tested positive yesterday and are confined to their cells. Julian tested negative. Association is canceled for all, which means that they are locked down in their cells. So even more extreme solitary confinement. Visits are still permitted for now, but prisoners and visitors have to test prior to the visit. So here we go again. This has happened before. This happened last winter. This man has underlying health conditions. He has an underlying lung condition. He has had too many strokes. He doesn't need to be there. This is ridiculous. Again, this is incredibly vindictive. Very obviously, it's blatant. And this is slow motion execution. And he's going to die. I'm not being overly dramatic here. He's going to die. And I think that that's really the end game here. I think that that's what they would hope would happen. And, you know, oh, that's terrible. He got COVID and died. Whew. that's just horrific, you know. And then progressives like Bernie Sanders and AOC will pop out of the woodwork to be like, oh, he was such a brave journalist after being silent all this time. That's 100% what's going to happen. But yes, he is not doing well. There's COVID once again in his spur or wing or whatever you want to call it. And it's not good. So I could go off on a huge tangent. I'm just going to add to that let me find, too many tabs open, y'all. I can get rid of that one. So I actually tweeted out earlier something that I think a lot of people are not remembering. So let me just bring this up. This is the ridiculousness of this, okay? Reminder. This photo was taken as Julian Assange sat in a tiny room at Belmarsh, watching on video link as members of the U.S. prosecution argued that he's a malingerer who's faking his ill health, as he was literally having a mini stroke. Julian Assange, right here, middle of a mini stroke. And he's in a room, tiny room in Belmarsh, watching on video link, unable to participate, unable to defend himself, unable to even be in the room. And he's listening to the U.S. prosecution accuse him of being a malingerer, saying that he's faking it, that he's over exaggerating his illnesses. And he's literally in the middle of a mini stroke. This is, just the grossness of this is hard for me to wrap my head around. The fact that we're treating this man in this way, that first of all, he is a foreign journalist being charged under United States laws, being afforded none of the protections of the U.S. Constitution. He's being held in arbitrary confinement, which the UN has said on multiple occasions. He has done nothing wrong. He's being held on remand. I mean, at this point, he's just being held because the U.S. says so. And he's in legal limbo. They are dragging this out for as long as humanly possible. And there's no sense of urgency whatsoever. I'm starting to get a little frustrated. I'm not trying to cause unnecessary drama, but I'm starting to get a little bit frustrated with the legal team. And, he needs to get out. There seems to be very little urgency about this. There's now COVID in his spur or whatever. And there's no reason for him to be there. So, we're going back to DC in April. I should also mention that on January 21st, Assange Defense is hosting an event in DC outside the Department of Justice. I know Paula's going to go. Randy Credico is going to be there. I think who else is going to? A bunch of people are going to be there. I wish I could go to that one. Unfortunately, that's a Friday, and then my kid has a weekend packed of basketball. So I don't know if I can make it. I would really like to, but that would be a tough one for me. But if you're in the DC area for January 21st, they're going to be at the Department of Justice. I'll see if I can bring up their flyer for that. So we need, this needs to be something that people are, yelling about. This is insanity. This is pure insanity. I don't understand why more people are not angry about this, about the way that he's being treated. It is really just kind of baffling to me. So I'm having a hard time finding the flyer. Oh, here we go.
And even though he hasn't been extradited and imprisoned in the U.S. yet, the precedent has been set, and we're seeing censorship all over the place now.
Yes.
And so-called fact checking, which is really just misinformation. And you can see it right there to the on the right in the news feed on Twitter. More than 270 medical experts call out Spotify, Joe Rogan for spreading COVID-19 misinformation. Every single day, there's a new thing calling out mostly credible information that
these are people who have been lying to you for 2 years, and they want to be the arbiters of truth.
That goes against the narrative and exposes a pernicious agenda, which is exactly what Assange was doing in his work.
Yes.
So the precedent's set, and now it's running rampant.
I'm going to keep saying it. Imagine what we would know if Julian Assange was free. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So here's the flyer for the event on January 21st. Again, if you're in the DC area or if you can make it there, it's Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. outside the Department of Justice. This was retweeted by Denver Free Assange. Shout out to Kendra. She does amazing work in Denver. So yes, if you are in the area, please try to make it out there. And then also, again, we are going to be going in April. We have a GoFundMe. I hate asking for money, you guys. I really do. It's literally the worst thing ever. But unfortunately, activism is expensive. So we need your help. If you can donate, please do. If you can just share, that's super helpful as well. The more eyes that get on it, the easier it is for us to raise the funds. We are having meetings every Monday. So after every meeting, I will try to update the GoFundMe as far as our process and our how we've progressed. At the last meeting, we discussed different locations that we were considering. We're pondering doing kind of like a double. We may do one outside the Department of Justice as well as one outside the British Embassy. But it really just kind of depends on what news we get, because at any moment we could get news about the appeal that they recently did. So after the December 10th ruling, so the defense team put in another appeal, and that information, there's no timeline for that. We don't have a date. There's no, like, we're going to know by this time. It could come at any moment. So that could drastically change our plans as far as the protest goes. Hey, let's think positively. Maybe it will become a celebration. Like maybe we could just have a party. I would be down for that. I would be 100% down for that. So I'm going to drop the GoFundMe link in the chat. If you guys can help us out, we would really appreciate it. We're over 1,500 right now. As I'm sure you guys can imagine, Airbnbs in Washington, D.C. are not cheap. And we also need one that's fairly large, because we do have a lot of people coming. So we try to get one that can sleep at least 10 to 12. Those are kind of expensive, obviously. And then we also need supplies. We need to get shirts so we can make shirts. We need to get button supplies so we can make more buttons. We need to print out all of our informational stuff that we hand out. We need to, help some people with their travel costs if possible, to help alleviate some of that. So I will post all receipts. Everything will be accounted for. Everything will go into the GoFundMe on the updates. So every penny that is donated will be spent wisely. I can promise you that. I hate asking for money. I know that everybody's in a really difficult spot right now. So it's unfortunate we have to do it, but it is kind of a necessary thing if we want to be able to get there. So we're once again going to the belly of the beast. I just recently posted some photos from our past actions. So you guys can kind of see what we do when we're there, what it looks like. So I think I've posted some from both we've done a protest at the British Embassy before and also at the Department of Justice. So I posted pictures of both. And again, if you can get there, please do. Please come. So we're collaborating with the End the Damn Wars folks. And so we are, they're going to have actions the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. We're going to do, we're trying to get connected with Reverend Annie Chambers, who's a former Black Panther who does a lot of mutual aid work in Baltimore. So we're trying to hook up with her and Ian Schlackman, who's a good friend. And we want to do a mutual aid day while we're there, and then also a day of protest. So that's what In the Damn Wars is going to be doing on Saturday and Sunday. And then Monday will be Assange focused entirely. Again, we may do a dual protest. We're still kind of trying to figure it out logistically and figure out what we can do and all of that stuff, and apply for permits, and how all that stuff goes. So yeah, if you guys can make it, we would seriously love to have you. It would be fantastic. I'm going to try to get I contacted Jimmy Dore. I don't know if he's doing a lot of traveling, but I would love for him to come. I know he's a big Assange supporter. I'm sure Max Blumenthal, Anya Parampil, I'm sure that they will come out. They've come to multiple of our events in DC. Lee Camp will probably come out. He usually comes to our events. Morgan Archikina, who's a journalist for Sputnik, will probably come out. There will be, a lot of people that are coming around. We would love to have you there. We need lots of noise. We need more people. We really do. So please consider it if you're able to make it. Let me know if you're considering coming, so that we can, make plans to meet up and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that's all I have for that. I'm trying not to rant too much. I'm really pretty heated about the Assange stuff today. I'm not going to lie. The COVID stuff and the just the ridiculousness of the limbo that he finds himself in, and the fact that there is no clear end game, there's no date set. I'm sure that that's torturous for him, and that's part of it. That's intentional. So it's process. The process is the punishment. So I'm pretty angry about it today. I'm trying not to go too over the top with it, because I can get a little extreme with my ranting. But yes, we need more noise. We need more actions. Again, if you cannot make it to DC, I should mention this as well. If you cannot make it to DC and you want to organize in your own area, that's amazing. And we will help you. We will 100% help you. We will help you figure out if there's other people in your area that you can organize with. We will help you figure out the process, find a good location, make sure that you can, do a protest there. We will get you all of the materials that you need as far as informational packets. Somerset Bean has a whole host of things that you can print on the website, somersetbean.com. I think it's .com. And so there's like buttons, there's flyers, there's informational stuff, everything. But we can help you. We are more than willing to help anybody who is willing to organize in your own area. We know that it's not possible for everybody to make a trip to DC. So if you can host sister protests, contact me, let me know that you're doing it. I'll help you get going if you need help get going, but also we will help you promote it. And we will make sure that Candles for Assange, which is run by my friend Alex, she does a fantastic job of compiling all of the global events for Julian Assange, and getting like a cohesive feel to each of them, and then blasting them on across all social media. So we will definitely help you in any way that we can. So if you want to host a sister protest, please just let us know. Please and thank you. I think that's it. I think that's all I have on Assange. I think that's it, you guys.
Right on. Well, moving from there to somebody who's directly related to Assange. If you can pull up that Axios piece.
Yes, hold please. I'm trying to, once again, I'm posting that in the chat one more time, the GoFundMe one more time. If you guys can help us out. There it is. Okay. I just want to make sure I did that. I can't remember if I did. I might have. I think I did. Okay. Sometimes I forget. Okay. So moving on to, oh, come on, computer. Sorry. It takes forever to share stuff on StreamYard. Okay, here we go.
So I'll read through this on my end, but this week the Justice Department announced, the Justice Department led, as many of you probably know, by Merrick Garland. You can see him right there, looking dapper as ever.
Asshole.
The Justice Department created a domestic terrorism unit. So I think a lot of us knew this was coming, but this is the formal or official announcement of it that was unveiled this week. So getting into it here, the Department of Justice is opening a new unit to investigate acts of domestic terrorism, a top national security official said during a Senate committee hearing Tuesday. Why it matters. The FBI and Justice Department warned repeatedly last year that the threat and investigations into acts of domestic terrorism, that the threat of and investigations into acts of domestic terrorism have increased since 2020. While there is no specific federal domestic terrorism statute, the federal government defines domestic terrorism as criminal acts dangerous to human life that appear to be intended to intimidate or coerce civilians or the policy of a government. It can also use other criminal charges when pursuing domestic terrorists.
Can I just stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
Okay. Defines domestic terrorism as criminal acts dangerous to human life that appear to be intended to intimidate or coerce civilians or the policy of a government. That is literally all activism.
Right. And that is the purpose of this unit and announcing it in this formal way. We remember a little while back, the Biden administration came out with its rubric of what constitutes domestic violent extremists. And this is the next step in that rollout. They are saying, as always, in perpetuity, that it's a response to what happened on January 6th of last year. But we all know that this goes well beyond January 6th, which, if anything, was a circus that got a bit violent. There were people who died, but only one of them was murdered. That was Ashley Babbitt. She was murdered by a Capitol police officer. So on a larger scale, this is absolutely meant to quash any and all
Dissent.
political dissent. And
And now they're building a wall around the White House. I'm sure that's fine.
yep, there are pictures of that have emerged online. So what that forebodes,
It's
or
weird because
what that signals, I don't know. But
and mainstream
something-
media isn't even talking. Like they're not even mentioning it. Not
Right.
peep. It's weird.
something is coming down the pipe, and
Yes.
we should all be very watchful.
Watch for false flags for sure. Don't get sucked in to a psyop, please.
Mhm. So it goes on to say here that what constitute domestic terrorism, or this unit, can also use other criminal charges when pursuing domestic terrorists. So basically, they have open season on any and all dissent, political dissent within the U.S. Lawmakers and active and former FBI agents have called for the creation of a specific statute to make such acts a federal crime, though others have argued it would be redundant or fear it could be used to crack down on constitutional acts of political dissent, which it absolutely will do. What they're saying: the testimony of Matthew Olson, Assistant Attorney General of the Department's National Security Division, before the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday, came less than a week after the first anniversary of the January 6th Capitol riot. Some lawmakers believe that was an act of terrorism, and those responsible should be given additional federal terrorism charges. And that is patently ludicrous. We've seen footage upon footage of what happened that day.
I have friends who were on the ground. They
If-
watched it.
If there was any terrorism that occurred, it was the murder of Ashley Babbitt. And as far as I know, no one's been prosecuted or
No one will be.
held to account for that. Going back to Matthew Olson here, Olson said, based on assessments from the intelligence community, that the country faces, quote, an elevated threat from domestic violent extremists, that is, individuals in the United States who seek to commit violent criminal acts in furtherance of domestic social or political goals, unquote.
So that's the government. Like that's who the domestic violent extremists are. Let's be real. Let's
Right.
be honest. That's who the domestic violent extremists are. The people who are continually stripping away your rights, starving you, making it impossible for you to survive. That's the terrorists. Those are the terrorists.
So going on here with Olson, quote, this group of dedicated attorneys will focus on the domestic terrorism threat, helping to ensure that these cases are handled properly and effectively coordinated across the Department of Justice and across the country, unquote, he said. Senator Chuck Grassley, who's a Republican from Iowa, questioned Jill Sanborn, Executive Assistant Director of the FBI's National Security Branch, if the FBI and the Justice Department are still investigating whether acts of domestic terrorism were committed during the nationwide racial justice protests in 2020. Sanborn said the department and bureau have opened around 800 cases related to violence committed during the protests and have arrested more than 250 people. Senator Mazie Hirono, a Democrat from Hawaii, asked Olson and Sanborn if the department is pursuing terrorism charges against January 6 rioters. Olson said investigations into the riot are continuing and charges will ultimately depend on the facts related to individual cases. The big picture: in response to the increased domestic terrorism threat assessments, the Biden administration last year released the first ever national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. It called for more information sharing between the government and tech sector, which is exactly what we need. Other nations and domestic law enforcement agent other nations and among excuse me. It called for more information sharing between the government and tech sector, other nations, and among domestic law enforcement agencies to, in part, help prevent domestic terrorism recruitment and mobilization to violence. FBI Director Christopher Wray said in March that the Bureau considers the Capitol riot an act of domestic terrorism, though no defendants have been charged with violating federal terrorism statutes. So, again, the point here being what they're trying to do is criminalize any and all political dissent. I don't know what their end game is beyond that. I certainly think there is a bigger one, but this does not bode well for them with the upcoming midterm elections. This reeks of authoritarianism, of fascism, essentially,
Yes.
and it's under the Biden administration. For all the hemming and hawing that went on about the Trump administration being a fascist one, the Biden administration has far and away been more fascist than the Trump administration,
Oh yeah.
and this is one glaring example of that. So this pretty much gives the Justice Department, the FBI, the same entities that pursued the or imposed upon us the hoax of Russiagate for 2 years. It gives them carte blanche to go after pretty much whomever they want for whatever reasons and tie them up in court or detain them indefinitely, thanks to the fact that Obama did away with habeas corpus. So what this bodes is more Daniel Hales, more people in jail for standing up against political injustices. Um, and it's meant to shut us down, to make us not even think about trying to stand up against a government that's obviously falling apart in so many ways. They're hard to count at this point. Um, Probably the most glaring example being that the president is almost certainly a zombie.
Oh,
Uh,
did you hear Kamala Harris the other day? The time is to do what we've always done, and that day is every day or something. Oh man.
yeah,
Whew.
yeah, it's I think they've had too many booster shots and they're really starting to get the clotting in their brains
They
and
were always idiots.
make no sense. Yeah, but this is very dangerous for citizens. This is completely anti-democratic. Nothing that should be celebrated. But the Democrats, of course, especially the ones who are running the uh, January 6th committee, which is just a joke, which we're all paying for with our tax dollars. This is something to celebrate for them, and they think that in some way it's going to return America to a former greatness it never had. What it's going to lead to is more and more injustice. But it's completely in line with what we're seeing, an rapidly increasing fascism within this country and around the world. The U.S. is following in its own way the examples that have been set by countries like Australia, Austria, Germany, much of Western Europe now. Uh, so it won't be long until protesting against so-called vaccine mandates will be deemed domestic terrorism, um, or refusing to take the injection will be deemed domestic terrorism. So this just opens the door to a never-ending road of injustice, and supposedly it's being done in the pursuit of justice, but it's a farce. It's a
And this
complete
is,
farce.
as Jesse mentioned at the top of this segment, this is directly correlated to what's happening to Julian Assange, Daniel Hale, all of those people, because first they want to take complete control over all systems of information, and then they want to take away your ability to hold them accountable. And that's exactly what they're doing. And that should terrify all of us. Anybody who's paying attention and is watching these things, this is a systematic fascism. This is not something they're very subtle about it. Maybe not so much subtle anymore, but it has been like kind of a subtle growth into this. They've been slow walking it for a very long time, and it's starting to ramp up exponentially, and it's not good. We're now seeing a wall being built around the White House, and the mainstream media hasn't said a word. I'm sorry, but if a wall's being built around the White House, every journalist on planet Earth should be like, what the hell is happening? And should be talking about it openly, and it's not being talked about. And we have, an award-winning journalist, probably the most consequential journalist of our time, maybe ever, being tortured to death in Belmarsh as they're trying to take away our ability to protest and seek accountability. This is not good. It's not a good development.
No, not at all. And it should also be noted that it gives carte blanche for the government to deploy the military within the borders of the United States, which is explicitly forbidden by the Posse Comitatus Act. But more and more, we're seeing that is being rendered obsolete by the government's own actions.
I have to stop you. Anna in the chat said, that's a pretty big leap to assume anti-vax mandate is going to lead to labeling people terrorists. Where is that even coming from? Are you not paying attention? I'm not trying to be rude here, but they've been calling the people who are unvaccinated terrorists for some time now. That's been happening. I don't know where you've been, but that's been happening.
Yeah. If you do some research on your own,
it doesn't even take some research.
Easily.
Hop on Twitter, go to any shitlib's Twitter feed, and that kind of rhetoric is being bantered about on a regular basis.
Right. And one only has to look at the change of anti-vaxxer in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and it's explicitly stated that an anti-vaxxer now constitutes someone who opposes government regulations mandating vaccination. So you oppose that government mandate in a way the government doesn't like, they can call it domestic terrorism.
And they will.
And they can do that because, as you see here, they've defined domestic terrorism so broadly that it can encompass just about anything they don't like.
It's not even just that. It's not the fact that they've defined it so broadly. It's that they can change the definition whenever it suits them. As they've shown, they change the definition of vaccine. They change the definition of anti-vaxxer. I mean, they're regularly changing definitions in order to fit their agenda. What's to stop them from continuing to do that? Nothing. Not a damn thing. Not a damn thing. And Phenomenal Mysticism said, Misty, some people think the government is being subtle and some people actually support the authoritarian measures, sadly. And yeah, I know. And it really drives me crazy. That's why I tweeted this earlier. These are the people who think that they should act as the arbiters of truth. And some of y'all are just fine and dandy with that. There are people who are regularly cheering this on. They think it's good. They think it's great. Some of these people proclaim to be leftists, and it's disgusting. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah. Whatever they proclaim to be, and it is usually leftist, they have some idea of a left that never existed and they've never been a part of. It's some ideal they hold, and they think that
it's this westernized, whitewashed, watered down.
Instead of this being authoritarianism, this is these are government actions for the common good. And we need to get over our individualism and go along with it because the state knows what's best for us. And I wholeheartedly reject that. But if that's the path you want to take, if that's how you want to live your life, by all means do so and deal with the consequences accordingly.
Yeah.
So going from there to another law issue, if you want to pull up the National Law Review piece.
Maybe. I'm having a hard time today, you guys. I guess I say that every time. I'm a hot mess. Okay, here we go.
So I'll read through this one too because it's quite short. But as many of you probably know, a week ago, the Supreme Court heard expedited oral arguments with regard to uh, Biden's OSHA mandate, vaccine mandate for companies with 100 or more employees, as well as a mandate for healthcare providers that operate with CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid
Can I interrupt
Services.
you briefly?
Sure.
Anna, we just listed examples. They literally changed the definition of words in real time. That's an example of a they could, they can, they will. They've done it. It's certainly not the only example, but this is not like some conspiracy theory. This is readily available if you're paying attention. Sorry. Just wanted to clear that up. Okay, go ahead. And yes, TYT can suck it, Jade.
Okay. So I just got distracted by the chat.
I keep getting distracted by the chat too, which is weird because I am really terrible about remembering the chat. But today I'm trying to do better, but it's distracting.
So on January 13, which was yesterday, the Supreme Court issued a split decision. So it stayed the OSHA ETS, which stands for Emergency Temporary Standard. So as of now, temporarily until the lower courts sort it out, it's going back to the lower courts now to sort out. Companies with 100 or more employees do not have to abide by Biden's vaccine and test mandate, but they ruled that healthcare providers whose employees are covered by CMS do have to abide by the vaccine mandate. So this is a Pyrrhic victory of sorts. And it was a 6-3 opinion with regard to OSHA. And I don't know if it says here what the count was with regard to CMS. It doesn't say, but the point being that both of these rulings right now by the Supreme Court are temporary. As I said, they're going back to the lower courts in which they originated to be re-argued. I don't know if they'll be kicked back up to the Supreme Court or what. But this is, again, a victory for companies with 100 or more employees, but not for the healthcare workers. And I can only see this further destroying the already very much destroyed healthcare system that we have in this country. Healthcare systems around the world are being destroyed, the NHS being a prime example of that, by these mandates, by healthcare workers who would rather quit their jobs than take an experimental substance that could very well kill them or disable them permanently. And we see how desperate the hospitals are getting, and that they're actually hiring back some of the quote unquote unvaccinated healthcare workers, as well as letting healthcare workers who've tested positive for COVID and are vaccinated work in these facilities, including in ICUs. That's how desperate they are to not have these systems break down. But the controlled demolition of the economy that is part and parcel of this so-called pandemic also applies to the healthcare system. There's a controlled demolition of the healthcare system happening at the same time. And given if anybody listened to the oral arguments last week and heard the just utter myopia of knowledge of the Supreme Court justices, including Justice Sonia Sotomayor. It's not only insane that the Supreme Court is deciding whether or not Americans should be forced to inject themselves with a toxic experimental substance that, even by the CDC head's own admission, doesn't work. Uh, that's insane in and of itself. And then you have Sotomayor, not only uh, citing statistics that are completely false and over exaggerated, overblown with regard to the amount of children who are in hospitals because of COVID. Um, there are something in the order of 6,000 children. She said 100,000. A lot of them are on ventilators, so she was off by a huge factor there. And then on top of that, she doesn't seem to have an understanding of the 10th Amendment, which gives states rights to police themselves. The federal government cannot police the states. She admitted in one of her responses or one of her arguments, I think without realizing that she was admitting it, that she doesn't understand why the states can pass laws to police themselves, but the federal government doesn't have the power to police the states, which means she doesn't understand or possibly has never read the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. So these are the people, and this is the intellect deciding the fate of the citizens of this country with regard to poisonous injections, and that should scare everybody. And again, the fact that these rulings are temporary means we still have to very much pay attention to this, because it could turn on a dime once again. And this government, this Biden administration, being a policy enforcer of larger global governance forces at play, has every intention of getting every American injected if they can help it. So we have to resist that. This isn't just about the injections. There's something much larger at work here, which we'll get to shortly. But anyway, that's the latest from the Supreme Court. If you haven't listened to the oral arguments, I recommend you do. You can find them on C-SPAN's channel on YouTube, I believe. And to hear some of how uneducated some of these justices are, and how almost all of the science surrounding what's going on was left out of the arguments, is just astonishing. It really was like kabuki theater. And the fact that something so important like this was done through rushed emergency hearings speaks even more to the absurdity of it. So moving on.
And also, Anna, I just want to say, if you want another example, check out the Line 3 protester who just had a domestic terrorism enhancement added onto her charges. Her name is Jessica Resnicek. I don't remember. I think it's Resnicek or something like that. But anyways, Line 3 protester is being a water protector being charged as a domestic terrorist. There's your example. Sorry, that's bothering me. It's bothering me. Okay.
All right.
What's next?
So moving from there to the foreign policy sector, we've been hearing a lot about Russia supposedly wanting a war ever so badly with Ukraine, even though Russia has said again and again and again and again and again that it has no intention of starting a war with Ukraine. The U.S. narrative, along with NATO, is that Russia is lying, and any second now they're going to cross their border, the border with Ukraine, and instigate a war. So Sputnik reported today that the CIA has reportedly trained Ukrainian squads to launch anti-Russian insurgency. And
Shocking.
and I'll read through this brief piece. But somebody commented on Twitter when I posted this, why is this news? And my answer to that is that this is news because we hear this constant, we've heard it for over a month now, this constant talk from the US that Russia is a warmonger and wants nothing but a hot war with Ukraine, which is totally untrue. It's been untrue since the beginning when the US and the British media started spinning this story a little ways back. There were Ukrainian citizens on the ground saying, we have no idea what they're talking about. We've seen or heard nothing of that. And this includes Ukrainians who are in the region concerned, the Donbass region. So this is the U.S. trying to manufacture a war. To what end exactly? I don't know. One can speculate, but anyway, on with this article. American intelligence has been reportedly working with Ukrainians for decades, but intensified its contacts in the wake of the 2014 coup supported by the Western governments. The training by the CIA ground branch started at the same time. The U.S.'s CIA has been running a dedicated program to train Ukrainian special operations forces on American soil, possibly to prepare them for a standoff with Russian forces, and running an, quote, insurgency, unquote, Yahoo News reported, citing numerous former intelligence and national security officials. The program is reportedly operated by the CIA's Ground Department, also known as Ground Branch, and was launched by President Barack Obama in 2015 after the West-backed coup in Ukraine that sparked an insurgency in the country's east. Since then, the program, which reportedly provided Ukrainian forces with firearms training, drills in using camouflage, exercises in land navigation and tactics, as well as training in intelligence gathering, received the backing of the two subsequent presidents, that's Trump and the current one, Biden, the sources claim. Offensive or defensive missions. The former and present agency and national security officials who talked with Yahoo News gave varying descriptions of the program's purpose. Some insisted that the program was never meant to serve as offensive in its nature. Quote, the purpose of the training and the training that was delivered was to assist in the collection of intelligence, unquote, an anonymous current senior intelligence official told the outlet. Yahoo News pointed out that the, quote, intelligence support, unquote, missions might vary in nature in the paramilitary context. The outlet also stressed that it is unclear how the Ukrainian forces will use the knowledge they have gained. One former intelligence official claimed in the interview with the news website that the training was set to enhance the ability of Kiev forces to, quote, push back against the Russians, unquote. However, some of the officials outright told Yahoo that the CIA is, quote, training an insurgency, unquote, under this program, and that its alumni were explicitly taught how, quote, to kill Russians, unquote. CIA spokesman Tammy Thorpe rejected the claims. Quote, suggestions that we have trained an armed insurgency in Ukraine are simply false, unquote, Thorpe said, which I find hilarious because, one, the CIA is never going to admit to that. And two, usually what the CIA says, you can assume that the opposite is true. Some of the news website sources claim that the purpose of these forces would be to make Russia's life, quote, miserable, unquote, should it decide to invade Ukraine, something the Kremlin has repeatedly rejected that it has in mind. Kiev's forces were reportedly trained on how to, quote, organize the resistance, unquote, behind the enemy lines, with one former intelligence official comparing their tactics with what the U.S. faced in Afghanistan fighting with the Taliban. Yahoo News sources also said that the CIA provided the Ukrainians with limited intelligence training for decades, but intensified these contacts after the 2014 coup. However, these efforts reportedly face some unprecedented challenges, namely fears that Ukraine's intelligence services were riddled with Russian spies. It reportedly got to a point of establishing a rule not to tell Ukrainians more than the CIA was ready to let Russia know. And just above that, you'll see a piece by Morgan Artukina, who's a friend of the show. Democratic U.S. senators introduce defending Ukraine bill that would, quote, collapse Russian economy. I won't go into that now for the sake of time, but
We should have
again,
Morgan on for like a regular facts.
right. And again, another example of how the US is doing everything within its power to provoke Russia into war with Ukraine. And keep in mind here that Ukraine is once again being used as a pawn by the US, by NATO, against Russia. And it's something we've seen since at least 2014. So going on 8 years now. And what the US's endgame is here, it's hard to say, especially because the Biden administration, with regard to foreign policy, seems so unfocused and so disorganized. It's almost like they're just doing it because they're expected to have a bellicose stance toward Russia. But we'll keep an eye on this as it plays out.
Indeed.
So moving from there, last week, if you remember, we talked about the end game with regard to this so-called pandemic and the madness that's ensued from it over the last 2 years. And that has everything to do with the central banks, the central banking cartels, and the policy distributors for those cartels, organizations like the World Economic Forum, who aren't just policy distributors, but also policy devisers as well. So earlier this week, the World Economic Forum released its Global Risks Report 2022, which revealed the top risks facing the world. So this is a summary of the risks report, which you can download via a link here. But if we scroll down to the top 10 global risks by severity over the next 10 years, if you're at that point, just down a little further. Yeah, right here. If you show the whole thing, that would be helpful. It's quite annoying because it comes and goes. But you'll see the first one now is climate action failure, followed by extreme weather, followed by biodiversity loss, followed by social cohesion erosion. Hold on, it's refreshing again.
Livelihood crises, infectious diseases, human
environmental damage, natural resource crises, debt crises, and then 10th, way at the bottom, geoeconomic confrontation. So you'll see that the bulk of what they say are the global risks facing us this year and ostensibly in the years to come are environmental. And if you scroll just beneath that, it has risks by the numbers. And this gives you some insight into where, how they came up with this information. So you see 1,000 global leaders in business, government, and civil society took part in the Global Risks Perception Survey. So, no normal citizens like you or me were asked about this. All global leaders in business, government, and civil society. And they've decided that climate related issues and the failure to address them adequately uh, pose the biggest risks for at least the coming year. This is the 17th edition of the Global Risks Report. There it says 5 of the top 10 global risks are all climate or environment related. Societal risks make up a third of the global top 10. Infectious diseases come lower down in the global top 10 at number 6. 77% of the 1,000 surveyed say international efforts to mitigate climate change have, quote, not started, unquote, or are in, quote, early development, unquote. And 84% are, quote, concerned, unquote, or, quote, worried, unquote, about the risks outlook and global divergence. So what this shows very clearly is that the World Economic Forum, along with similar entities, are setting an agenda, much like they set the pandemic agenda. And what they're seeing now is that the pandemic agenda is starting to wear itself out. People are waking up every day to the scam of it, to the fact that it is imposing authoritarianism on every aspect of their lives, from their jobs to their social lives. So this is the World Economic Forum's pivot on behalf of the banking cartels to the next global emergency we have to be concerned about, which is climate change and the failure to address it. And as Nick Hudson pointed out, this is complete histrionics. This is dramatizing crises which are not actually crises, and then proposing that the only solutions for them are global solutions. And if you go down...
Oh, I stopped sharing.
Okay.
We were at the end, so I figured we were done. We were like already at the bottom.
I just
Okay.
wanted to go to the last 2 paragraphs. As the curtain lifts on the Davos Agenda 2022, which is about to go down, I believe in the next week or so, Borje Brende, president of the World Economic Forum, invites swift and decisive mobilization on the state of the world. He offers a powerful reminder that, quote, our planet is on fire and we have to deal with it. This is a risk we know. We are not faced with a blind spot, unquote, and calls for, quote, more private-public cooperation, unquote, to address inequality and nature challenges. Finally, he cautions, quote, risk reports show the cost of inaction far outweighing the cost of action, unquote, and suggests that while, quote, we're moving in the right direction, we're not moving fast enough, unquote. So all of this, including at COP26, is presented to us as trying to save the planet, trying to undo the damage that's been done to the climate by precisely the people who are here offering us the solution. And if we look at what this actually is, if you can bring up the UK column piece.
My computer's being weird. Also, hold on just a minute. Rob, I fucking love you, brother. I love you. Rob just gave us a incredibly generous donation to the GoFundMe. I love you, brother.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, thank you, Rob. Rob is a rock star. Rob has always been incredibly supportive of us and all of the work that we do, and we appreciate you more than you know. Sorry, I just happened to see that and about shit
That's
my pants.
all right.
So thank you, Rob.
All right.
Okay. Here we go.
So this is a piece that was published very recently on the 6th of January in UK Column, which is a great news outlet. I recommend following their work if you're not already. So Ian Davis, who's been really on top of the Great Reset agenda and the global public-private partnership agenda, he wrote this piece called The Not So Great Carbon Reset. And he really shows here how things like COP26 are a front and not meant in any way to address destruction of the climate and the environment, both of which are very real, but they've been co-opted by these global financial entities for very hideous ends. And I'm just going to read the first part here, and then there's another part I want to read because it really homes in on what's going on here. And you can see just how insane these people are and how dramatically they intend to change our lives, and how so far they've used the so-called pandemic to do that, but now they're pivoting toward climate change to further progress toward their ends. So at the recent UN Climate Change Summit in Glasgow, COP26, Mark Carney, the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action, previously Governor of the Bank of England, formally announced the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, GFANZ. First launched in April 2021 by the US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate Change, John Kerry. The initial GFANZ progress report states, governments must ensure a well-managed just transition, including by working closely with industry and finance. GFANZ was created to accelerate this process. Its goal is to transform the global financial system in order to finance the investment in a net zero economy. We must transition the entire financial system alongside every sector of our economies, supporting frameworks and metrics to measure portfolio and sectoral net zero alignment. While the rather speculative claims of GFANZ grabbed all the headlines, the next person on the COP26 stage following Carney was Erkki Liikanen, the chairman of the International Financial Reporting Standards (IFRS) Foundation. He proclaimed the creation of the International Sustainability Standards Board (ISSB). In doing so, he established the, quote, basis for action, unquote, precisely as prescribed by the UN 3 decades earlier. The ISSB delivers on the globalist agenda outlined in UN Agenda 21. It creates the asset rating system that will see a global partnership of stakeholder capitalists assume control of every resource on Earth. This economic regime will sit within a new international monetary and financial system, IMFS, that will enable the stakeholder partners to centrally plan the global economy and manage every aspect of it. In the first part of this article, we discussed how a global public-private partnership, or G3P, had seized upon the opportunity of the pseudo-pandemic to embark upon this transition. In August 2019, the gathered G7 central bankers at Jackson Hole, Wyoming, admitted that the existing IMFS was finished and that there was an urgent need to construct a new one as, quote, the center won't hold, unquote. The global investment firm BlackRock, which appears to own a large share in the major central banks, introduced the joint fiscal and monetary concept of going direct. In the document they presented at Jackson Hole, BlackRock outlined what going direct would mean politically. Going direct means the central bank finding ways to get central bank money directly in the hands of public and private sector spenders. Going direct works by enforcing policy coordination so that the fiscal expansion does not lead to an offsetting increase in interest rates. In this article, we are going to explore the immense economic and financial implications of BlackRock's plan, which has been set in motion and is currently operating globally. It stipulates that central banks, which are privately owned, control our government's fiscal policy, and that policy coordination is enforced. In other words, central banks and ultimately private wealth managers will control the spending of our taxes and of the debt taken out in our and our children's name. This is a global coup d'etat. The government you elect no longer controls how it spends your tax income. Central banks do, and they will do as directed by private money. We currently endure taxation without representation. However, to fully grasp the global scale of the revolution, we need to understand the G3P, which we covered in part 1 of this article, which I also recommend reading. And if you scroll down, there's an excellent chart there that presents the global public-private partnership hierarchy. I encourage you to look at that on your own. It's very concise, and it shows you where policy begins and where it ends with us, the public, the policy subjects down at the bottom. Now, Misty, if you can just scroll down to the section that's titled Converting Nature into Ecosystem Services.
I'm sorry for scrolling so fast. I'm sure that hurts people's eyeballs, but there we go.
All right, I just want to read this section because this really gets to what's going on. And we hear about reducing the carbon footprint. This has nothing to do with reducing the carbon footprint. Reducing the carbon footprint is a front to get you taxed for your use of carbon. And this is turning carbon and sources of carbon into a market, into a new economy. So in September 2021, the New York Stock Exchange announced a whole new type of asset class. The NYSE developed this class in partnership with the Intrinsic Exchange Group, IEG, whose founding investors include the Rockefeller Foundation. The idea of this novel asset class is that owners of natural assets, such as farmers, conservation trusts, governments, etc., will be able to create an investment vehicle as a specialized corporation, one which holds the rights to, quote, ecosystem services, unquote. Carbon sequestration, afforestation, or clean water supplies, for example, will be the assets which determine the value of a member of this asset class, the Natural Asset Company, NAC. Investors such as private investors, individuals and institutions, corporations, sovereign wealth funds, and multilateral development banks can then buy the assets registered to the NACs. By converting nature and all natural resources into financial assets, the operators of this scheme enjoy seemingly boundless investment opportunities. Even so, the IEG's claim for the potential scale of this new global market is still staggering. The IEG states that the purpose of this new asset class and its NACs is, quote, the conversion of natural assets into financial capital, unquote. The ambition, as expressed by the IEG, is so gargantuan as almost to defy comprehension. Quote, we are pioneering a new asset class based on natural assets and the mechanism to convert them to financial capital. These assets are essential, making life on Earth possible and enjoyable. They include biological systems that provide clean air, water, foods, medicines, a stable climate, human health, and societal potential. The potential of this asset class is immense. Nature's economy is larger than our current industrial economy. We can tap this store of wealth. According to the IEG, the current asset value of the world's economy is $512 trillion, including all financial derivatives. The projected value of assets in the new economy they are creating is said to be worth 8 times that, an estimated $4,000 trillion or $4 quadrillion. The solution to climate change is a market opportunity unlike any ever seen in human history. The G3P has decreed that nature is now an ecosystem service. The cycle of life itself is a product. Everything that is currently owned by human beings, both publicly and privately, is to be included in the capitalization process. The IEG adds, on public lands, natural asset owners are typically government actors. On private lands, asset owners are typically private farmers, ranchers, or forest property owners. Natural equity is a store of value like any other security or monetized asset. The stocks of water, timber, biodiversity, soil, carbon, fish, or other natural assets make life on Earth possible and are thus the ultimate store of value for investors. There are also vast swaths of the Earth, such as deep oceans, Antarctica, and the atmosphere, that are not owned by anyone. In a telling reference to commons, local lands which peasants in the past could all graze their sheep on until the lands were seized piecemeal by the elite, these are now dubbed the global commons. The IEG is among the G3P stakeholder partners who, in addition to capitalizing all that is owned, intend to capitalize all that is not owned. Quote, though some services like freshwater production may be monetized directly, most ecosystem services currently are not. The equity of a natural asset company captures all of the above elements of value, creating financial realization via a security, whereby the full value of natural assets is priced in a market transaction. The G3P is attempting the seizure of everything, of all resources owned and those which currently are not. This is a gambit for total dominion over the planet. The reason why we are now told we will own nothing is that private investors will own everything. Nature will no longer be the environment which makes life on Earth possible, but rather an ecosystem service which creates a store of value for investors. And then just below that, I recommend everybody watching this episode of Unlimited Hangout, which is Whitney Webb's excellent show. And she, during COP26, did an excellent show with Corey Morningstar and Ian Davis. Ian Davis, again, the author of this piece. This piece goes a lot deeper than what I just read, but you can see here where the global predator class is going, seeking to marketize the entire Earth, and we will merely be renters on that Earth. So they will own the forests, and if we want to use the forests, we'll have to pay them in the form of a carbon tax. One way they will make their money and ostensibly build an economy, a market that is worth $4 quadrillion, an insane amount of money. Keep in mind, none of us ever asked for this. I doubt any of us want this.
No.
But this is where these people want to go, and this is how insane they are. And this is the end game of where we're at right now. Again, it's way beyond vaccines and vaccine mandates. Vaccines and vaccine mandates are but a gateway to this end, where truly we will own nothing and supposedly be happy about it, as the World Economic Forum has said.
You will eat bugs and you will like it.
And so quickly, just going from there to the Department of Homeland Security, if you can bring up that tab. So what's interesting here is that the Global Risks Report 2022, as issued by the World Economic Forum, came out on January 11th. The very next day, the Department of Homeland Security in the US announces its Climate Change Professionals Program. And I'll just read the first paragraph here. We can drop the link in the chat if you want to read the rest of it. But it says here, today, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, announced the creation of a new climate change professionals program to recruit recent graduates and current federal employees to support the department's growing focus on adapting to climate change and improving resilience. Resilience, many of you may know, is a term that comes up again and again and again in the lexicon of this pivot toward climate change as the next emerging crisis. The program is one of many new activities under the umbrella of the DHS Climate Change Action Group, established in 2021 by Secretary Alejandro N. Mayorkas. So if you remember that chart we showed briefly in Ian Davis's piece, you could see that it was hierarchical and the policy was devised up at the top by the central banks and think tanks like the WEF, which is essentially what it is. It's a globalist think tank. And then those policies are distributed downward to policy enforcers who enforce those policies through legislation and through acts like this, developing climate change professionals program and a climate change action group. So we can see here in real time how this is working and how the US and believe you me, every other Western nation is going along with this. So this is what's coming down the pipe. Climate change is going to be the next crisis. You can see how the World Economic Forum is attempting to engineer that by dropping concern over infectious diseases down to its sixth concern in its list of top 10, even though we're supposedly still being ravaged by a so-called pandemic. So this is the global agenda that people talk about that's behind what's been happening for the past 2 years. As you can see, it's not conspiratorial. It's all here laid out if you care to read it. But unfortunately, a lot of people want to believe that it's conspiratorial. A lot of people on the lockdown left just won't even go here because they have some kind of mental block that prevents them from doing so. But this is where it's going, and we ignore this at our own peril. So I just want to wrap up with two positive things, more or less. And the first one comes from the World Council for Health. If you remember, a little while back, we interviewed Emma Strom, who works with the World Council for Health. And
shout out to Emma.
And this is a new organization which is meant to counter the World Health Organization in basically using science and truth. And they've been doing an excellent job. They have doctors such as Tess Lowry, who you can see on the right in that video, which I encourage you to watch. It's a short video that is announcing this call for immediate stop to the COVID-19 experimental quote unquote vaccines. And it's a cease and desist declaration, which if you go to the link, you can read on your own. And you can also use it to give to your employer if they're trying to force these injections on you. You can use it as a tool of self-defense. And very briefly at the top here, it says, "We declare that COVID-19 vaccinations are dangerous and unsafe for human use. The manufacturing, distribution, administration, and promotion of these injections violate basic principles of law." And if you read further down, it goes into the violations of international law, of human rights law, presented by these injections. And you can see under the video of Dr. Lowry that globally renowned experts, including Dr. Paul Alexander, Dr. Byram Brittle, Dr. Geert Vanden Bosch, Professor Dolores Cahill, and Drs. Sucharit Bhakdi, Ryan Cole, Richard Fleming, Robert W. Malone, Peter McCullough, Mark Trozzi, Michael Yeadon, Wolfgang Vodarg, and Vladimir Zelenko, among many others, consistently warn the world about the adverse effects resulting from COVID-19 experimental injections. They also warn about their long-term effects, which cannot be known at this time since most clinical trials will not be completed until 2023, and some as late as 2025. I highly recommend everybody check this out, read it, use it if you find it useful, if you find it applicable to your personal situation. And realize that this is organized resistance from some of the best doctors and scientists in the world, not the Faucis, people who've never treated a single patient in their lives, but people like Vladimir Zelenko, for example, who has treated thousands of COVID patients using early treatment like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and other early prophylactic interventions that don't require intubation and remdesivir, which usually end up killing people. Please take a look at this. This is super important in the fight to stop this madness. And read and share as you see fit. And on a similar note, I just want to highlight, if you can pull up that last
Yeah, I had the wrong link.
tab.
Whoops a daisy. Is it this one?
Yes,
Okay.
this is it. So in German, it's the Stiftung Corona Ausschuss, which is the Corona Investigative Committee. And they've been in operation since mid-July 2020 and conducting live multi-hour sessions to investigate why federal and state governments impose unprecedented restrictions as part of the coronavirus response and what the consequences have been and still are for people. Right now, they're really focusing on the injections, and there's a link, Misty, if you can drop that Odyssey link in the chat, that's their Odyssey channel. And you can watch all of their sessions. They're recorded. You can watch the full sessions. You can watch clips, individual interviews they do. But this is by and large led by Dr. Rainer Fulmick. He's a trial lawyer who's licensed in Germany as well as California. And he's been doing some excellent work along with Dr. Wolfgang Wodarg, who is a German doctor. And as I said, they're really focusing on these injections now. And they just did an excellent session with Dr. Mike Yeadon, in which he provides proof positive that the injections have been rolled out in an intentional way so as to kill people en masse. Don't take my word for it. Watch the most recent session. He presents the data. He essentially what he did is he went into VAERS with colleagues and looked at the adverse events by batch number, graphed them out, and showed that the differentiation in adverse events in batch numbers for the Pfizer injections, the Janssen injection, and the Moderna injection, the differentiation in adverse events is so across the map and the batch numbers so inconsistent that this could only be done on purpose. And Mike Yeadon is in an excellent place to judge that. He formerly worked for Pfizer for at least 2 decades, I believe. He was very heavily involved in the quality assurance process, in the consistency process. And he very strongly makes the case that what is being done here is being done intentionally. That's why we're seeing some people have no reactions to these injections, at least in the short term, and other people getting disabled or even dying almost immediately after receiving the injections. So please check that out. The end game for them in all of this is to bring those people responsible to international criminal court and charge them under the Nuremberg Code. Some people think that's far-fetched. Think that if you want, but they're doing very serious work and trying to push this forward in a very serious way. And I think they're doing humanity an amazing service in doing so. And they're not doing this for profit or attention or anything of the sort. They're doing this because they care about human welfare and they see what's happening. They're also very concerned with the passports, the vaccine passports that are being rolled out with this. Everything bad that comes along with these injections, they're going into, they're attacking, and they intend to bring to court and bring the perpetrators of these crimes to justice. So please check that out, watch those sessions, and stay informed, stay up to date on this stuff, because there are forces out there that are very much trying to harm us and control our lives. We can see where that's going in Ian Davis's piece. We can see it being laid out right now by the World Economic Forum, and we have to resist and we have to refuse.
Do not comply.
Do not comply.
Yes, do not comply. Okay, guys, I think that wraps us up for this week for Facts on Friday. I'm going to drop the GoFundMe in the chat one more time. Rob, my brother, there's not enough thanks for you, my dude. That just gave us a huge leap forward towards making our goal. So we appreciate you more than we have words for. So if you guys can help us out by donating or sharing the link, I would really appreciate it. And then tonight we have another Free Assange vigil at 9 o'clock. We have, you know him as One Addy Ads on Twitter. He was the guy who did some amazing on the ground journalism on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. He's going to be on the vigil tonight. So you guys should swing through and check that out at 9 Eastern. Tomorrow I have a bonus bitch with Kit Cabello from Hardlands Media. He's very busy through the week, so is unable to make my Wednesday time. So we're having a bonus bitch tomorrow at noon Eastern. So definitely check that out as well. And thank you, Jamie. And we have some other stuff coming up. We've got Jesse's in talks with some guests that we have coming up soon. So keep an eye out on that. I have some people I'm talking to. Keep an eye on that. And I think that about does us. I don't know. Do we have anything else that I'm forgetting?
So on Monday, I'm going to be on Rick Munn's new radio show, which is on Asia Pacific Today. It's a great media outlet out of Australia. That's going to be at 6 a.m. Eastern time. So not sure who's going to be up then and able to make it. But if you are, if you think you will be, just pop onto my Twitter in the next few days. I'll put all the information on there once I have it. And then Misty's going to be on next week as well to talk Assange.
Wednesday, I think, but I need to double check dates because it's changed a couple times. So I just want to make sure I have a solid the right date. But I think Wednesday he wants me to come on and talk about mostly Julian Assange, of course. That's generally when people ask me to come on their shows. That's what they want to talk about, which is fine by me. So yeah, I think it's Wednesday. So Jesse will be Monday. I'm Wednesday. I'm really excited for him and his new show. He's been a good friend to us. So yeah, that'll be awesome. And like I said, vigil tonight, don't miss it, 9 o'clock Eastern. If you missed Tuesday's vigil, you should go back and watch it. It was dope. We had Alex Rubenstein on for the first hour, and we talked about a host of issues. And then we had the one and only Scott Horton on for hour 2 to talk about the 20-year of Guantanamo Bay. And he was, as always, a wealth of knowledge. And that was a lot of fun. So it was a really good vigil. So definitely come through tonight, 9 o'clock. And share the GoFundMe if you're able, and start making plans for DC in April, please and thank you.
Hey,
I think that's all we have.
Did you drop the link for the WCH declaration in the chat? Because Beyond Cannabis is asking for it.
Pretty sure I did. I don't know if I did. Yes, it's up there.
It's up there. Okay.
I can do it again, but yeah.
Yeah, can you do it one more time?
It is up there. There you go, dude. It's in there. You're good to go. Cool.
All right.
Thanks, guys. We appreciate you,
everybody.
And then, of course, we'll be back next week. Same time, same place. 4 o'clock every Friday. And again, thanks, Rob. We love you, dude. We love you. Okay. Bye, guys. Thank you.